She gripped the steering wheel and hissed, "Don't talk tonight. You don't fit in with my family." I stayed silent. She didn't look at me. She didn't know the phone buzzing in my pocket was from the board of a company her father worships. She couldn't imagine that the man she was hiding was the one they'd been trying to meet for months. She thought she was protecting her family from embarrassment. But she was wrong. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever felt invisible to someone who should see you most clearly, drop a comment below. You're not alone. The rain came down in sheets that November evening, turning the highway into a river of brake lights and shadow. Inside the silver Camry, modest, 3 years old, no frills, the silence between them felt heavier than the storm outside. He sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in his lap, watching the water race sideways across his window. His name was Daniel, though most people at her family's gatherings wouldn't bother to remember it. Or they'd get it wrong. Dan. David. Darren. It didn't matter to them, and somewhere along the way, it had stopped mattering to him too. His wife, Vanessa, drove with both hands locked at 10 and 2, her jaw set in that particular way that meant she'd been rehearsing something in her head. He knew her tells by now. The way she'd bite the inside of her cheek when she was anxious. The way her breathing would go shallow when she was about to say something she thought would hurt him. They'd been married for 2 years. He'd been in love with her for 3. Daniel. Her voice cut through the drum of rain on metal. Not soft. Not warm. Clinical, almost. Like a manager addressing an underperforming employee. He turned to look at her profile, illuminated by the dashboard lights. She was beautiful, objectively, undeniably beautiful. Caramel skin, high cheekbones, dark eyes that could melt or freeze depending on her mood. Tonight, they were frozen. Yeah? I need you to understand something before we get there. He waited. My parents they're particular people. They have expectations. Standards. I know. Do you? She glanced at him, just for a second, before her eyes snapped back to the road. Because every time we go there, you do this thing where you try to contribute to conversations you don't understand. Business talk. Investment talk. You're not in that world, and when you try to act like you are, she stopped herself, recalibrated. It's uncomfortable. For everyone. Daniel's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He felt it but didn't reach for it. I don't try to act like anything, he said quietly. I answer when people ask me questions. That's the problem. You don't need to answer. Just smile. Nod. Let my father and Jordan do the talking. They know what they're talking about. She paused at a red light, and in that pause, the word she'd been holding back finally broke free. You're a good man, Daniel. You're kind. You're steady. But you don't fit in with my family, and tonight is really important to my dad. There are going to be people there, important people, and I can't have you embarrassing yourself. Or me. There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for months, maybe longer. Perhaps since the beginning. You embarrass me. Daniel looked down at his hands. Working hands, his mother used to call them. Hands that had scrubbed floors, stacked boxes, typed code until his fingers cramped. Hands that had built something from nothing while the world looked the other way. So what do you want me to do? He asked. Just, don't talk tonight. Please. Just this once. Let me handle my family. The light turned green. She accelerated smoothly, her Alexander McQueen heels pressing the gas pedal with practiced precision. Everything about Vanessa was practiced. Curated. Perfect on the surface. Okay, Daniel said. Okay? I won't talk. She exhaled, and he could see her shoulders drop an inch. Relief. Thank you. Really. I know it's not fair, but after tonight, after my dad closes this deal he's been working on, things will be different. Less stress. He'll be in a better mood, and maybe, she reached over and squeezed his knee, a gesture that might have felt affectionate if it wasn't so transactional. Maybe he'll finally start to see what I see in you. Daniel didn't ask what she saw in him. He wasn't sure he wanted to know anymore. His phone buzzed again. This time, it vibrated 3 times in quick succession. Urgent. Vanessa's eyes flicked to his jacket. Are you going to get that? It's nothing. It's been going off since we left the apartment. Work stuff. I'll deal with it later. I thought you didn't have work stuff. The edge in her voice was back. I thought you were still freelancing. Consulting. Whatever you call it. Consulting. That's what he'd told her when they met, and it wasn't technically a lie. He did consult. He consulted on billion-dollar acquisitions, on market strategies that could topple or elevate entire industries, on investments that required more capital than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. But she'd heard freelancing and pictured someone hustling for clients on LinkedIn, someone unstable, someone she could fix or mold or save. Someone beneath her. It's just a client checking in, Daniel said. On a Saturday night. Some clients don't sleep. She made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scoff. Must be nice to have clients that demanding. Maybe one day you'll have enough of them to afford a better car. She said it like a joke, but jokes were just truths wearing masks. Daniel looked out the window again. They were leaving the highway now, entering the kind of neighborhood where the streets had names like Willowbrook Estates and Canterbury Heights. Mansions set back from the road, hidden behind gates and ancient oaks. Old money, or people who wanted to look like old money. Vanessa's parents lived in a sprawling colonial at the end of Ashford Lane. White pillars, circular driveway, a fountain that probably cost more than the Camry. As they pulled through the opened gates, Daniel's phone buzzed one more time. He pulled it out just enough to see the screen. Urgent, board meeting moved to Monday 9 a.m. Need final approval on Crawford acquisition. $2.3 billion on the table. Please confirm. The message was from Elise, his chief operating officer. Beneath it, 3 missed calls from Raymond, his general counsel. Daniel typed back quickly, thumbs moving with practice speed. Confirmed. I'll call in tomorrow to review terms. He slipped the phone back into his pocket before Vanessa could see. Ready, she asked, killing the engine. The house loomed before them, every window blazing with golden light. Through the glass, Daniel could see shapes moving. People. Laughter. The sound of silverware on china. A world that didn't want him in it. Ready, he said. Vanessa checked her makeup in the rearview mirror, applied a fresh coat of lipstick, then stepped out of the car without waiting for him. Daniel sat there for a moment longer, listening to the rain, feeling the weight of the evening ahead settle over him like a blanket made of lead. Then he opened the door and followed his wife into the house where he would be made invisible. He didn't know yet that by the end of the night, he would become the only person they could see. The front door opened before Vanessa could knock, and her mother appeared in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and silk. Darling! Patricia Montgomery swept her daughter into an embrace that looked warm but felt choreographed, the kind of hug meant to be seen rather than felt. You look stunning. Is that the Versace I sent you? It is, Mom. Thank you again. And your hair, did you go to Sean Paul like I suggested? I did. You were right about him. He's amazing. Daniel stood 3 steps behind them, rain dripping from his jacket onto the imported Italian tile. Neither woman acknowledged him. Patricia finally glanced in his direction, her smile tightening just slightly at the corners. Oh. David. I didn't see you there. It's Daniel, Mrs. Montgomery. Right. Daniel. Of course. She stepped aside to let them in, though her body language suggested she was only really opening the door for one of them. Do come in. You're dripping on the floor. Sorry. Daniel stepped onto the mat, careful to wipe his shoes. Give me your jacket. I'll have Maria put it somewhere. He shrugged off his coat, a simple black rain jacket, functional, bought on sale at an outlet mall 2 years ago. Beneath it, he wore dark slacks and a charcoal sweater, clean and understated. On his wrist, though, was the only thing he allowed himself that hinted at his real life, a Patek Philippe Nautilus, rose gold, with a slate-grey dial. It had cost him $180,000, and he'd bought it not because he needed people to see it, but because his father had always dreamed of owning a watch that could be passed down through generations. His father had died before that dream could come true. So Daniel wore it in his memory, hidden usually beneath his sleeves. Patricia took his jacket with 2 fingers, holding it away from her body as if it might be contaminated, and handed it off to a woman in a black uniform who materialized from a side hallway. "Everyone's in the sitting room," Patricia said, looping her arm through Vanessa's. "Your father's been talking about the Whitmore deal all week. He's insufferable when he gets like this, but I suppose that's what happens when you're on the verge of securing the biggest contract of your career." They walked ahead, their heels clicking in sync against the marble floor. Daniel followed. The Montgomery house was exactly what you'd expect from people who'd spent their lives trying to prove they belonged among the wealthy. Every surface gleamed. Every painting was gilt-framed and imposing. Every piece of furniture looked expensive and uncomfortable. It was a museum to insecurity. The sitting room, though calling it that seemed absurd given its size, was filled with people. Vanessa's father, Gregory Montgomery, held court near the fireplace, gesturing with a tumbler of scotch in one hand. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver hair that he wore slick back like a 1980s Wall Street trader. His suit was bespoke, his watch was a Rolex, and his laugh was the kind that demanded attention. Beside him stood Vanessa's brother, Jordan. 28, cocky, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. He worked for their father's company, Montgomery Capital Solutions, and never let anyone forget it. There were others too. Business associates. Friends. People whose names Daniel wouldn't bother learning because they wouldn't bother learning his. "There she is," Gregory boomed when he saw Vanessa. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. "My beautiful girl. You get more gorgeous every time I see you." "Dad, stop." But she was glowing. This was the version of Vanessa that Daniel had fallen in love with, bright, laughing, unguarded. She was only ever like this around her family. Never around him. Gregory set her down and finally noticed Daniel standing in the doorway. His smile didn't fade, exactly, but it changed. Became polite. Professional. The way you'd smile at a waiter or a valet. "And you brought Daniel, was it?" "Yes, sir." "Good, good. Glad you could make it." Gregory's handshake was firm to the point of being aggressive, a dominance display disguised as politeness. "How's the job search going?" "I'm not looking for a job, Mr. Montgomery. I run my own firm." "Right, right. Consulting," Vanessa mentioned. "What kind of consulting?" "Investment advisory." "Ah." Gregory's eyes glazed over slightly, the way they always did when Daniel tried to explain what he did. "So you help people figure out where to put their money?" "Something like that." "Well, that's good. Everyone needs a side hustle these days." He clapped Daniel on the shoulder, already turning away. "Jordan, come say hello to your sister." And just like that, Daniel ceased to exist. Jordan swaggered over, whiskey in hand, and pulled Vanessa into a side hug. "Yo, V, looking good. Love the dress." "Thanks, Jay." "And hey, damn the man. How's it going?" Jordan's grin was wolfish, predatory. He'd never called Daniel by his actual name. It was always "damn the man" or "Steve or my guy," always said with just enough condescension to make it clear that Daniel wasn't his guy at all. "Good, Jordan. You?" "Can't complain, brother. Just closed a huge deal for the firm last week. 7 figures. Dad's been riding me hard, but what else is new, right?" He laughed and drained his glass. You still doing the freelance thing? I run a firm. Right. Your firm. How many employees you got? Daniel could have said 47. He could have mentioned the offices in Manhattan, London, Singapore, and Dubai. He could have listed the clients, Fortune 500 companies, sovereign wealth funds, tech giants who paid him 8 figures just for his advice. But he'd learned that people like Jordan didn't actually want answers. They wanted confirmations of what they already believed. It's a small operation, Daniel said. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Gotta start somewhere, right? Jordan clapped him on the back hard enough to sting. You want a drink? We got some good stuff tonight. Dad broke out the Macallan. I'm okay. Thank you. Suit yourself. Dinner was announced by Patricia, and they all filed into the dining room, a cavernous space dominated by a table that could seat 20. Crystal chandeliers. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden that probably required a full-time staff. Daniel was seated between Vanessa and an empty chair, across from Jordan and one of Gregory's business partners, a man named Whitmore who spent the entire first course talking about his vacation home in Aspen. Vanessa kept her hand on Daniel's knee under the table, squeezing whenever he started to speak. It was a signal. A warning. Be quiet. Don't embarrass me. So he was quiet. He cut his food into small bites. He nodded when people made eye contact. He smiled politely when Jordan made jokes at his expense. Daniel here probably thinks Patagonia is a retirement plan, am I right? And didn't correct him. His phone buzzed twice during the salad course. Once during the main course. Vanessa felt it and shot him a look. He silenced it. The cruelty started small, the way it always did. Gregory, working on his third scotch, leaned back in his chair and gestured at Daniel with his fork. So, Daniel. Vanessa tells me you're from, where was it? Detroit. Chicago, sir. South Side. Right, Chicago. Tough city. My firm looked at some properties there a few years back. Decided against it. Too much risk, not enough return. He said it casually, as if he were discussing weather patterns. What did your father do? He was a custodian. Worked for the city. A beat of silence. Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Jordan smirked into his wine glass. Whitmore suddenly became very interested in his plate. A custodian, Gregory repeated. Honest work. It was. And your mother? She was a nurse. County hospital. Public sector. Well, they served their community. That's admirable. The way Gregory said admirable made it sound like quaint. Must have been quite an adjustment for you, marrying into a family like ours. Different worlds, you know. Vanessa's hand tightened on Daniel's knee. It's been an adjustment, Daniel said evenly. I bet. I grew up with nothing too, you know. My father sold insurance door to door. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment until I was 12. But I worked hard. Put myself through college. Built my firm from the ground up. Gregory leaned forward, his eyes locked on Daniel with the intensity of a man who'd told this story 1,000 times and believed every word. That's the thing about this country, anyone can make it if they're willing to work for it. You just have to want it badly enough. If you've ever sat at a table where you were made to feel small, leave a comment. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Daniel nodded. That's true, sir. You hungry for it, Daniel? You got that fire. I like to think so. Because I'll tell you, the business world, the real business world, it's not for the faint of heart. It's cutthroat. You need thick skin. Sharp instincts. And you need connections. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's the secret no one tells you. Gregory pointed his fork at Jordan. That's why I'm grooming this one. Teaching him the ropes. He's got the hunger. Don't you, son? Hell yeah, I do. Jordan raised his glass. Trying to fill those big shoes, Pops. You will. You're a Montgomery. The implication hung in the air like smoke. And Daniel, you are not. Patricia chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Daniel, I've been meaning to ask, where did you get that sweater? It's very simple. Target, I think. Target. She said it like he'd admitted to shoplifting. Well, it's very practical. Vanessa, darling, we really must take Daniel shopping. He could use some pieces with a bit more refinement. First impressions matter so much in business. Mom, Vanessa said weakly. What? I'm only trying to help. If Daniel wants to move in these circles, he needs to look the part. Daniel felt the heat rising in his chest but kept his face neutral. I appreciate the thought, Mrs. Montgomery. Call me Patricia. We're family, after all. They weren't family. Not really. He'd been to their house a dozen times and she'd never once called him by the right name. Jordan, sensing blood in the water, leaned across the table. So, Dee, let me ask you something. You got any big deals cooking? Any major clients? A few things in the works. Yeah? What kind of numbers we talking? 5 figures? 6? Daniel took a sip of water. I'd rather not discuss specifics. Oh, come on. We're all friends here. Give us a ballpark. Vanessa squeezed his knee so hard her nails dug into his skin. It's proprietary, Daniel said. Jordan laughed. Proprietary? Listen to him. That's code for I don't have any clients, right, Dad? Gregory chuckled. Jordan, leave the man alone. Not everyone can run in our circles. I'm just saying, if I landed a big client, I'd be shouting it from the rooftops. Unless... Jordan's grin widened. Unless there are no clients to shout about. Jordan, Vanessa said sharply. What? I'm just making conversation. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Longer this time. A call. Gregory's eyes flicked to Daniel's pocket. You going to get that? It can wait. Must be some client if they're calling during dinner on a Saturday. The phone stopped buzzing. Then started again immediately. Patricia frowned. That's rather rude, isn't it? Leaving your phone on during a meal. I apologize. Daniel pulled the phone out, intending to silence it, but the screen lit up with a name that made his stomach drop. Raymond Torres, Esquire. And beneath it, urgent, Crawford deal approval needed tonight. He declined the call and set the phone face down on the table. Everything all right? Vanessa whispered. Fine. But it wasn't fine. The Crawford deal was the largest acquisition his firm had ever attempted. $2.3 billion to purchase a struggling but strategically vital semiconductor manufacturer. The board needed his approval to move forward, and if they didn't get it by midnight, they'd lose the window. And the thing was, Daniel knew something no one else at this table knew. The Crawford deal was the deal Gregory Montgomery had been chasing for 6 months. Montgomery Capital Solutions had been trying to position themselves as intermediaries, hoping to broker an introduction between Crawford's board and the mysterious investment firm everyone called the Silent King, a nickname the financial press had given Daniel's company because of how quietly they operated, how rarely Daniel appeared in public. Gregory had no idea that the billionaire he'd been desperate to meet was sitting across from him, being lectured about his Target sweater. The irony was almost funny. Almost. So, Gregory said, turning his attention to Whitmore. Tell Daniel about the Whitmore Foundation. Maybe he can pick up some tips on how to build something that lasts. And just like that, Daniel disappeared from the conversation again. He sat there, nodding occasionally, feeling Vanessa's hand on his knee like a leash. He thought about his father. He thought about the nights his mother had worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. He thought about the scholarship kid at Northwestern who'd taught himself to code in a public library because he couldn't afford a computer. He thought about the man he'd become, the man who'd built something extraordinary through silence, through strategy, through sheer force of will. And he thought about the woman sitting beside him, the woman he'd loved, who was now squeezing his leg under the table to keep him from speaking. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from Elise: "Sir, I wouldn't interrupt if it wasn't critical. Please call as soon as possible." Daniel looked up and found Gregory staring at him. "Problem?" Gregory asked. "No, sir. Just work." "On a Saturday night? What kind of work can't wait until Monday?" "The important kind." Gregory laughed. "The important kind. I like that. Confidence. That's good. But let me give you some advice, son, and I hope you take this in the spirit it's intended. Real power isn't about working all the time. Real power is about making other people work for you. When you're at the top, you don't take calls on Saturday night. Other people take your calls on Saturday night." "That's true," Daniel said quietly. "You'll get there. Maybe. If you hustle. But until then?" Gregory raised his glass. "Keep grinding." Jordan clinked his glass against his father's. "Preach, Dad." Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time, he stood up. Every eye at the table turned to him. "Excuse me," he said. "I need to take this." Vanessa's face went pale. "Daniel. I'll just be a minute." "You don't need to." But he was already walking toward the hallway, phone in hand, feeling their stares burning into his back. Behind him, he heard Patricia whisper to Vanessa, "Really, darling, couldn't you have taught him better manners?" He stepped into the hallway, found an empty study, and closed the door. Then he called Raymond back. "Sir, thank God. Tell me what's happening." "Crawford's board is spooked. They got a counteroffer from Bellstone Capital. It's lower than ours, but Bellstone has name recognition. Crawford's chairman wants to know who we are. He wants to meet you. In person. Tonight if possible." Daniel closed his eyes. "Tonight's not possible. Sir, if we don't move now, we lose this. And if we lose Crawford, we lose our foothold in the semiconductor space for the next 5 years. I understand that. Then help me understand why you won't take a meeting that could save a $2.3 billion deal." "Because I'm standing in the house of people who think I'm nobody," Daniel thought. "Because my wife just told me not to speak. Because I'm tired of proving myself to people who will never believe in me anyway." But what he said was, "Set the meeting for Monday morning. First thing. I'll handle it then. Monday might be too late. Then make it not too late. That's what I pay you for, Raymond." A long pause. "Understood, sir. I'll do what I can." Daniel hung up and stood there in the study, surrounded by leather-bound books that probably no one in this house had ever read, and he felt something shift inside him. A decision crystallizing. He looked down at his phone. At the dozens of missed calls and messages from people who needed him, who valued him, who saw him as he really was. Then he walked back to the dining room. While dessert was being served, some elaborate chocolate confection that Patricia insisted had been flown in from Paris, Daniel sat quietly and let his mind drift back. He wasn't really at the table anymore. He was 12 years old, walking home from school through streets that smelled like rust and exhaust, where every third storefront was boarded up and every conversation was a negotiation for survival. His father had worked nights at the city maintenance depot, cleaning office buildings downtown. His mother had worked the ER, coming home with stories that would give you nightmares and a smile that somehow never broke. They'd lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with pipes that banged when the heat came on and windows that never quite closed all the way. But they'd been happy. Or at least, Daniel had thought they were happy. He'd been smart, though. Everyone said so. Teachers. Counselors. The librarian who let him stay after hours to use the computers. "That boy's going somewhere," they'd say, and his mother would beam with pride. He'd gotten a full ride to Northwestern. Computer science and economics. He'd devoured every book, every lecture, every opportunity. He'd taught himself coding languages that hadn't been invented when the textbooks were written. He'd networked with professors and venture capitalists and anyone who would give him 5 minutes of their time. By 23, he'd built his first algorithm, a predictive model for tech sector investments that was so accurate it bordered on prophetic. By 25, he'd launched his own firm with $50,000 in seed money from a professor who believed in him. By 27, that firm was managing $500 million in assets. By 30, it was $5 billion. Now, at 32, Daniel's firm, Crown Point Capital, managed just under $15 billion across multiple sectors. They were the silent hand behind a dozen major acquisitions, the invisible partner that CEOs called when they needed someone smart enough to see around corners and discreet enough to keep their name out of the press. Daniel had built it all by being quiet. By being underestimated. By letting people like Gregory Montgomery assume he was nobody while he quietly moved mountains. He'd learned early that showing wealth made you a target. That announcing success made you vulnerable. That the richest peace was in silence. His father had died when Daniel was 29. Heart attack at 56, on a night shift, surrounded by mop buckets and industrial cleaning supplies. He'd never gotten to see what his son had built. Daniel had bought the Patek Philippe the day after the funeral. He wore it every day, hidden under his sleeve, a private memorial to the man who'd taught him that dignity wasn't about what you owned, it was about how you carried yourself. His mother had cried when he'd tried to buy her a house. "Baby, I don't need a mansion," she'd said. "I just need to know you're happy." That was the question, wasn't it? Was he happy? He'd met Vanessa at a charity gala 2.5 years ago. She'd been there with friends, dressed in something that probably cost more than his rent, laughing in a way that made the whole room turn and look. She'd noticed him standing alone near the bar, and she'd smiled. He'd fallen for that smile. They'd talked for hours. She'd told him about her childhood, her family, her dreams of starting her own event planning business. He'd told her he was in finance. She'd assumed he meant something small, something scrappy. He'd never corrected her. Maybe that was his mistake. He'd loved the way she looked at him in those early days, like he was stable, dependable, safe. Like he was someone who wouldn't leave, who wouldn't hurt her, who wouldn't prioritize ambition over family the way her father always had. She'd loved him, he thought, because she believed he didn't have the power to hurt her. Now, sitting at her family's table, listening to them tear him down with smiles on their faces, Daniel wondered if she'd ever loved him at all. Or if she'd just loved the version of him that made her feel superior. The version that would never challenge her. The version that would stay small so she could feel big. His phone buzzed again. Vanessa's hand clamped down on his wrist. "Daniel." "Not again." "It's important." "More important than this?" "Than my family." He looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes were pleading, desperate. But behind the desperation was something else. Something harder. Fear. She was afraid of him embarrassing her. Of him proving her family right, that she'd married beneath herself, that she'd settled for someone ordinary. But what she didn't understand was that he'd never been ordinary. He'd just been patient. "Excuse me," he said again, and this time he didn't wait for permission. Daniel stepped back into the study and checked his messages. 3 from Elise. 2 from Raymond. 1 from Crawford's CEO directly, "We need to know who we're dealing with. Name your terms or we walk." He stared at that message for a long time. In the other room, he could hear Gregory's voice rising and falling, telling another story about another deal, building himself up while tearing everyone else down. He heard Jordan laugh. He heard Vanessa say something inaudible, her voice bright and false. He heard Patricia mention something about getting Daniel some proper clothes for next time. And something inside him snapped. Not violently. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way ice cracks under pressure, one thin fracture that spreads until the whole surface gives way. He opened his messages and started typing. To Elise, schedule full board meeting for 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'm approving Crawford tonight. Prepare announcement. To Raymond, tell Crawford's board I'll meet them personally Monday morning, 9 a.m., at their office. Make sure they understand who they're meeting with. To Crawford's CEO, you'll have your answer in 1 hour. And yes, you'll want this deal. He hit send on all three. Then he walked back to the dining room. Daniel returned to his seat without a word. Vanessa looked at him with wide eyes. Everything okay? Fine. Was it important? It's handled. Gregory, now deep into his fourth scotch, was holding forth about the Crawford deal. The problem, he was saying, gesturing with his glass, is that nobody knows who this silent king actually is. It's this investment firm that's been making waves for years, but the owner never shows his face. Never does interviews. Never attends industry events. Smart, Whitmore said. Mystery creates value. Or it creates suspicion, Jordan countered. I mean, what's he hiding? If you're that successful, why not take the credit? Because he doesn't need credit, Gregory said. That's the thing. This guy, whoever he is operating at a level where attention is a liability. He makes his money quietly and then disappears. Hell, we've been trying to get a meeting with him for 6 months. The Crawford board wants him involved, and if we could broker that introduction, we'd be set for life. Have you gotten close? Whitmore asked. We've tried everything. Reached out through back channels, offered to fly out to meet him anywhere in the world, promised full discretion. Nothing. His people just keep saying he's considering his options. Gregory shook his head. It's frustrating as hell. Maybe he's not interested in small firms, Jordan said with a smirk. Small? Montgomery Capital manages $200 million in assets. And this guy probably manages 20 times that. Try 50 times, Gregory muttered. Which is why we need him. Daniel kept his eyes on his plate. Vanessa was watching him, though. He could feel it. What do you think, Daniel? Gregory asked suddenly. Everyone turned. Daniel looked up. About what? About this Silent King character. You're in finance. You must have heard of him. I've heard the name. And? What's your read? Is he a genius or just a guy who got lucky? This was a test. Gregory's way of putting Daniel in his place, of proving that he didn't belong in conversations about real money, real power. Daniel could have deflected. Could have given some generic answer and faded back into invisibility. But he was so tired of being invisible. I think, Daniel said carefully, that anyone who can build that kind of wealth without needing external validation is probably smarter than most people give him credit for. Gregory raised an eyebrow. Interesting take. I mean, everyone wants credit, right? Everyone wants to be seen. But wanting to be seen makes you vulnerable. It makes you chase the wrong things. Status. Approval. Other people's respect. Daniel's voice was quiet but steady. Maybe this guy figured out that real power doesn't need an audience. The table went silent. Jordan snorted. That's a nice philosophy, but in the real world, you need visibility. You need to brand yourself. You can't build an empire by hiding in the shadows. Can't you? Daniel asked. No. You can't. Jordan leaned forward. Look, I get it. You're trying to sound deep. But business is about relationships. It's about who you know. It's about making sure people know ****. This Silent King thing, it's a gimmick. And eventually, gimmicks run out. Maybe, Daniel said. Or maybe he knows something you don't. Gregory laughed, but there was an edge to it. You sound like you admire him. I respect anyone who succeeds on their own terms. even if those terms mean being a ghost. Especially then. Vanessa's hand found Daniel's under the table again, but this time it wasn't squeezing in warning. It was trembling. She could sense something shifting, something she couldn't control. Patricia cleared her throat. Well, this is all very fascinating, but perhaps we should talk about something more relatable. Gregory, tell everyone about your golf game last week. Daniel's phone rang. Not a buzz. Not a vibration. A full, loud ring that cut through the room like a gunshot. Everyone froze. I'm sorry, Daniel said, reaching for his pocket. I really need to. For God's sake, Patricia muttered. But Daniel was already looking at the screen, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Crawford, James, CEO. The man himself. Calling Daniel directly. If he answered this call here, now, everything would unravel. But if he didn't answer, he might lose the deal. Daniel, Vanessa hissed. Not now. He stood up. I have to take this. No, you don't. I'm sorry. Excuse me. He walked toward the hallway, and as he did, he heard Gregory say, Unbelievable. Who the hell does he think he is? Daniel stepped into the study, closed the door, and answered. Mr. Crawford. Listen, I don't have a lot of time. James Crawford's voice was clipped, urgent. My board is breathing down my neck. We need an answer on this acquisition tonight, and we need to know we're dealing with someone real. Your people keep saying you'll meet with us, but I need more than that. I need confirmation that you're serious. That you're who everyone says you are. I'm serious. Then prove it. Meet me tonight. Right now. I'm in the city. I'll come to you. Daniel's mind raced. Mr. Crawford, I'm in the middle of something. I don't care. You want this deal? You meet me tonight or we go with Bellstone. Bellstone's offer is $400 million less than mine. And they have a face. They have a name. They have credibility. You have mystery, and mystery doesn't pay the bills. Daniel looked at the door. Beyond it, he could hear voices rising. Gregory's booming laugh. Jordan's cutting remarks. Vanessa's voice, apologizing for him. Always apologizing for him. What's your location? Daniel asked. Crawford gave him an address. A private club downtown. 20 minutes away. I can be there in 30, Daniel said. You have 20, or we're done. The line went dead. Daniel stood there, phone in hand, and felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He could leave now. Drive to the club. Seal the deal. Save the acquisition and prove, once again, that he was exactly who he built himself to be. But if he left, Vanessa would never forgive him. Her family would never forgive him. He'd be proving them right, that he didn't belong, that he prioritized work over family, that he was exactly the kind of man who couldn't be trusted to sit at their table. But then again, did he even want to sit at this table anymore? Did he want to spend the rest of his life being squeezed into silence? Being told to shrink? Being loved conditionally, only when he stayed small enough not to threaten anyone's ego? Daniel looked down at his watch. The Patek Philippe caught the light, rose gold gleaming. What would Dad do? His father would have told him to protect his dignity. To never let anyone make him feel less than what he was. But his father had also told him that love was worth fighting for. So which is this? Love worth fighting for, or dignity worth protecting? His phone buzzed with a text from Elise. Board is ready. Crawford announcement prepared. We're just waiting on you, sir. Another text, this time from Raymond. Whatever you're doing, sir, I hope it's worth it. We're running out of time. And then a third text from a number he didn't immediately recognize. This is James Crawford. I'm leaving for the club now. You have 18 minutes. Daniel put his phone in his pocket and walked back to the dining room. When Daniel returned, dessert had been cleared and coffee was being served. The conversation had shifted to something lighter: vacation plans, country clubs, the kind of small talk that wealthy people use to fill space. He sat down next to Vanessa, who looked at him with barely concealed frustration. "Is everything all right?" she whispered. "I need to leave." Her face went pale. "What?" Something came up. "I need to go." "Daniel, you can't be serious. We haven't even." "I'm sorry. It's urgent." "More urgent than this?" "Than my family." He looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman he'd married, the woman he'd thought he'd spend his life with. "Yes," he said quietly. "More urgent than this." Her eyes filled with tears, but behind the tears was anger. "If you walk out of here right now, we're done. I mean it. Vanessa. I have spent 2 years defending you to them. 2 years trying to make them see what I see in you. And you're going to leave? Now? You're going to prove them right. Maybe they are right." She blinked. "What? Maybe I don't fit in here. Maybe I never did. Don't do this." "I'm not doing anything. I'm just finally admitting the truth." "Which is what?" "That you're ashamed of me. That you've always been ashamed of me. And I'm tired of trying to be someone I'm not just so you can feel comfortable." Vanessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. Gregory, sensing drama, turned his attention back to them. "Everything all right over there?" Daniel stood up. "I need to go. Thank you for dinner, Mr. Montgomery." "You're leaving? Before coffee?" "I have a meeting." "A meeting?" "At 9:30 on a Saturday night." "Yes, sir." Gregory laughed. "Must be some meeting." "It is." Jordan leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Let me guess, one of your big clients?" "Something like that." "Right. And I'm having drinks with Warren Buffett later." Jordan looked around the table for validation, and everyone laughed except Vanessa, who sat frozen, staring at Daniel like she'd never seen him before. Daniel pulled his phone out one more time. He checked the message from Crawford. 15 minutes. He was about to leave when his phone rang again. This time, it wasn't on vibrate. This time, it rang out loud, the sound echoing through the dining room. And this time, the voice that came through, because Daniel had accidentally hit speaker, was clear and unmistakable. "Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Crawford's board is convening in 14 minutes and we need your final approval to move forward with the acquisition. Can you confirm?" Everyone at the table turned to stare. The voice continued, professional and urgent. "Sir? Are you there?" Daniel looked at the phone in his hand. At the room full of people who'd spent the entire evening making him feel small. At Vanessa, whose eyes were now wide with confusion. At Gregory, whose smug expression had faltered. And he made a decision. "I'm here, Elise," he said into the phone, calm and clear. "Confirm the Crawford acquisition. Move forward with the announcement." "Confirmed, sir. And just to verify, you're approving the full $2.3 billion purchase price." The room went dead silent. "That's correct." "Understood. I'll notify the board immediately. Will you still be able to make the meeting with Mr. Crawford at the club?" "I'm leaving now." "Perfect. I've sent a car. It should be arriving at your location in approximately 3 minutes. Thank you, Elise." He ended the call. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating, until finally Jordan said, "What the hell was that?" Daniel slipped his phone back into his pocket. "That was work." "Work? Did she just say $2.3 billion? "She did." "For what? What kind of consulting?" "I don't consult," Daniel said quietly. "I invest. I acquire. I build." Gregory stood up slowly, his face pale. Wait. Wait just a minute. Did she say Crawford? As in Crawford Semiconductor? Daniel didn't answer. And did she call you sir? She did. Who the hell are you? The question hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Daniel looked at Vanessa. She was trembling, her hands gripping the edge of the table. I tried to tell you, he said softly. You just never asked. Patricia stood up, her voice shaking. This is absurd. Daniel, if this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke, Mrs. Montgomery. Then explain yourself. Explain what we just heard. Before Daniel could answer, there was a sound from the front of the house. Car doors closing. Footsteps on the stone path. The doorbell rang. Everyone turned toward the entrance hall. Maria, the housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. Mr. Montgomery, there are several gentlemen here asking for. She paused, confused. They're asking for Mr. Daniel Cross. Gregory's face went white. Cross? Your last name is Cross. Vanessa gasped. Oh my God. What? Jordan looked between them. What's Cross? Crown Point Capital, Gregory whispered. The Silent King. The owner of Crown Point Capital is named Cross. Jordan's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. No. No way. There's no way. But Daniel was already walking toward the entrance hall. Behind him, chairs scraped as everyone scrambled to follow. Standing in the Montgomery's marble foyer were four people Daniel knew well. Elise Park, his COO, a sharp woman in her 40s wearing a power suit and an expression of barely concealed irritation. Raymond Torres, his general counsel, carrying a leather portfolio. And two people Daniel hadn't expected, James Crawford himself, CEO of Crawford Semiconductor, and his CFO, Ellen Martinez. Sir, Elise said, her voice crisp. I apologize for the intrusion, but Mr. Crawford insisted on meeting immediately, and when you didn't leave the address, I took the liberty of sending the team here directly. Crawford stepped forward, his hand extended. He was a tall man, late 50s, with grey hair and eyes that had seen 1,000 boardrooms. Mr. Cross. Finally. We meet at last. Daniel shook his hand. Mr. Crawford. I apologize for the unusual circumstances. Unusual is one word for it. Crawford glanced around at the shocked faces behind Daniel. I hope we're not interrupting anything important. Nothing that can't wait. Behind Daniel, he heard Gregory make a strangled sound. Crawford pulled out his phone and held up a document. I've reviewed your terms. They're aggressive, but fair. My board has authorized me to accept pending one condition. Which is? I need to know you're real. That Crown Point Capital isn't just smoke and mirrors. I need to see proof that you can execute on a deal this size. Crawford's eyes were steady, assessing. Can you do that? Raymond stepped forward and handed Daniel the leather portfolio. Daniel opened it, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and handed it to Crawford. This is a letter of credit from Deutsche Bank for $2.5 billion, issued in my name and available for immediate transfer upon contract signature. The additional $200 million is for any unforeseen integration costs. Crawford stared at the document. His hands were shaking slightly. Ellen Martinez leaned over his shoulder, read it, and whispered, It's real. Jesus Christ, Crawford breathed. You really are him. The Silent King. I don't love that nickname. I don't care what we call you. Crawford looked up, and there was something like relief in his eyes. You can save my company. Bellstone's offer was garbage. They'd have stripped us for parts and sold us off within 2 years. But your reputation is for building, not destroying. That's the goal. Then we have a deal. Crawford extended his hand again. Daniel shook it. We have a deal. Raymond immediately pulled out a tablet. I'll send the preliminary contracts to your counsel tonight. We can schedule the formal signing for Monday morning. Perfect. Crawford turned to leave, then paused. He looked at Gregory, who was standing frozen in the doorway, and his expression shifted to recognition. Wait. Montgomery? Gregory Montgomery. Gregory managed to nod. You've been trying to get a meeting with Mr. Cross for months. Yes. Yes, we have. Crawford looked between them, understanding dawning. Oh my God. You didn't know. You had no idea who he was, did you? Gregory said nothing. Crawford let out a low whistle. Well. That's unfortunate. He clapped Daniel on the shoulder. Welcome to the big leagues, Mr. Cross. Or should I say, welcome back? You've been here all along. Thank you, sir. Crawford, Ellen, and the rest of the team left, their footsteps echoing across the marble until the front door closed behind them with a heavy thud. The silence that followed was devastating. Daniel turned to face the Montgomery family. Gregory stood there, his face the color of ash. Patricia had one hand over her mouth. Jordan looked like he'd been struck by lightning. And Vanessa was crying, mascara running down her perfect cheeks, her whole body shaking. Daniel, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at her for a long moment. Would it have mattered? Of course it would have. No. I mean, would it have mattered if I was still just Daniel? Just a guy who did consulting work? Would you have loved me then? She opened her mouth but no words came out. You told me not to talk tonight, Daniel continued, his voice quiet but steady. You told me I didn't fit in. You squeezed my leg under the table every time I tried to speak. You laughed when your brother made jokes at my expense. You let your parents tear me down and you said nothing. I was trying to protect you. From what? From your family? Or from yourself? Daniel took a step closer. You were embarrassed by me, Vanessa. Not because of who I am, but because of who you thought I was. And that's worse. Because it means you never actually saw me. You just saw a version of me that was safe. That was manageable. That would never challenge you or overshadow you or make you question whether you were the one who married up. Vanessa's tears came harder. That's not fair. Isn't it? Gregory finally found his voice. Now wait just a damn minute. Daniel, Mr. Cross, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. No misunderstanding, Daniel said, turning to him. You made yourself very clear, Mr. Montgomery. I don't fit in. I'm not in your world. I don't have the hunger. I should let the real business people do the talking. I didn't mean. You did mean it. All of it. Daniel's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. And you know what? You were right about one thing. I'm not in your world. Your world is small. Insecure. Built on borrowed money and borrowed credibility. My world. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My world doesn't need your approval. Jordan stepped forward, his face red. Hey, man, if you're really this big shot investor, why the hell were you pretending to be nobody? Why the act? It wasn't an act. I just didn't feel the need to announce myself. And I wanted to know if Vanessa, if anyone, could love me without knowing what I had. Turns out, they can't. He looked at Vanessa one last time. She was reaching for him, her hand outstretched. Daniel, please. We can fix this. We can start over. I can? You can what? Love me now that you know I'm successful? Now that I'm the man your father's been trying to meet? He shook his head. That's not love, Vanessa. That's opportunism. That's not fair. I did love you. I do love you. You loved the idea of me. The safe choice. The man who wouldn't threaten your family's sense of superiority. His voice softened, just slightly. But you never loved *me*. Because you never actually tried to know me. He turned toward the door. Patricia stepped forward. Mr. Cross, please. I think we all got off on the wrong foot tonight. Mrs. Montgomery, you've called me the wrong name 12 times. You've mispronounced David, Derek, and Darren. You've suggested I shop at better stores and learn better manners. You've made it very clear that I'm not welcome in your home. He met her eyes. So I'm leaving. Like you wanted. But Gregory's company, we've been trying to work with you. You've been trying to use me. To broker deals you're not qualified to make on your own. I'm not interested. Gregory's face went from white to purple. Now you listen here. You can't just walk into my house. Your house? Daniel's voice cut through the room like a blade. Mr. Montgomery, do you know who holds the mortgage on this property? Gregory blinked. What? The mortgage. The loan you took out 4 years ago to renovate and expand. Do you know who owns that debt? The color drained from Gregory's face again. I bought a portfolio of residential mortgages 2 years ago. Yours was included. Which means, technically, I own a piece of this house. Daniel smiled coldly. So when I walk out of here tonight, I'm not walking out of your house. I'm walking out of mine. The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel moved toward the door, but Vanessa grabbed his arm. Please, she sobbed. Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll change. I'll be better. Just please don't leave me. He gently removed her hand from his arm. Vanessa, I loved you. I really did. But you didn't want a partner. You wanted a project. Someone you could fix, someone who would make you feel like you were doing a good deed by loving them. He stepped back. Find someone who makes you feel that way. But it won't be me. Daniel. But he was already walking out the door. Into the rain. Into the night. Into the life he'd built in silence. Behind him, he heard Vanessa's sobs. He heard Gregory shouting something. He heard Patricia crying. And he kept walking. The car Elise had sent was waiting at the end of the driveway. A black Mercedes S-Class, rain beading on its polished surface. The driver opened the door. Mr. Cross. Thank you. Daniel slid into the back seat and closed his eyes as the car pulled away from the Montgomery mansion. He didn't look back. His phone buzzed. A text from Raymond. Crawford deal is done. Board is ecstatic. Well played, sir. Another from Elise. I've cleared your schedule for tomorrow. You deserve a day off after whatever that was. And one from a number he'd blocked months ago but somehow still had saved. Vanessa. I know you won't read this. I know I don't deserve for you to read this. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I loved you. I still love you. I just didn't know how to show it. I was scared. Scared that if you became successful, you'd leave me. Scared that I wasn't enough. So I tried to keep you small because I thought that would keep you mine. I see now how wrong that was. How cruel. If you can ever forgive me. He didn't read the rest. He deleted the message and put his phone away. The city lights blurred past, gold and white and red, reflecting off the wet streets. Beautiful and distant. Where to, sir? The driver asked. Daniel thought about it. His penthouse in the city. His office. Somewhere quiet where he could think. But what he said was, the nursing home on Palmer Street. The nursing home, sir. Yes. It's late. Visiting hours. They'll let me in. 20 minutes later, Daniel stood in the hallway of Evergreen Care Facility, rain still dripping from his jacket. The nurse at the desk smiled when she saw him. Mr. Cross. We weren't expecting you tonight. I know. I hope it's all right. Of course. She'll be so happy to see you. She's still awake, you know how she is. Never sleeps before midnight. The nurse stood and led him down a corridor that smelled like antiseptic and lavender. She's been talking about you all week. Says her boy is going to change the world. Daniel smiled despite himself. She always says that. She's usually right about you. They stopped at a door marked 237. The nurse knocked softly, then pushed it open. Inside, sitting in a chair by the window, wrapped in a blue robe and reading a book by lamplight, was Daniel's mother. She looked up when he entered, and her face transformed. "Baby." "Hi, Mom." She set down her book and opened her arms. Daniel crossed the room and hugged her, breathing in the familiar smell of cocoa butter and mint. "What are you doing here so late?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. Then her expression shifted. "What happened? Are you all right?" "I'm fine." "Don't lie to your mother. I can see it in your face." She guided him to sit in the chair next to hers. "Tell me." So he did. He told her about the dinner. About Vanessa's words in the car. About the humiliation, the condescension, the way they'd made him feel invisible. He told her about walking out. About choosing himself. When he finished, his mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took his hand. "Your father would be proud of you." Daniel's throat tightened. Would he? He always said that real strength isn't in how much you can take. It's in knowing when to walk away. She squeezed his hand. "You walked away from people who didn't value you. That's not weakness, baby. That's wisdom." "I loved her, Mom." "I know. I thought she loved me too." "She probably did. In her way. But some people don't know how to love without conditions. Without needing to feel superior. And that's not your fault, that's theirs." His mother's eyes were gentle but firm. "You deserve someone who sees you. All of you. Not just the parts that make them comfortable." Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. They sat together in silence for a while, listening to the rain against the window. Finally, his mother said, "You know what your father used to tell me?" "What?" "He'd say, Patricia," she smiled at the memory, "rich is nice, but peace is priceless." She looked at Daniel. "You built something incredible, baby. But don't ever let anyone take your peace. Not for money, not for love, not for anything." "I won't, Mom." "Good." She patted his hand. "Now tell me about this deal you closed. $2.3 billion? Lord have mercy, your father would have lost his mind." Daniel laughed, and it felt good. Real. So he told her about Crawford, about the acquisition, about the future he was building. And for the first time in hours, he felt like himself again. Not the man Vanessa had wanted him to be. Not the man the Montgomerys had dismissed. Just Daniel Cross. The Silent King. A man who'd learned that sometimes the richest peace is silence, and sometimes silence is the only answer to those who never bothered to listen. 6 months later. The press conference was held in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons, packed with journalists, analysts, and industry leaders. On stage, Daniel sat between James Crawford and Ellen Martinez, the three of them facing a sea of cameras and recording devices. Crawford leaned into his microphone. "Today, I'm pleased to announce that Crawford Semiconductor has completed its acquisition by Crown Point Capital, and I'm even more pleased to announce that under new ownership, we've already seen a 40% increase in production efficiency and a $600 million jump in valuation. Mr. Cross and his team have done what many said was impossible. They've turned a struggling company into an industry leader." Applause filled the room. A journalist from the Financial Times raised her hand. "Mr. Cross, you've been notoriously private throughout your career. Why agree to this public event?" Daniel leaned forward. "Because silence served its purpose, but at a certain point, visibility becomes responsibility. Crown Point Capital manages $15 billion across multiple sectors. We employ thousands of people. We impact markets. And I realized that hiding behind anonymity was no longer serving the people who depend on us. Does this mean you'll be more public-facing going forward? Selectively. I'm not interested in being a celebrity. But I am interested in being accountable. Another journalist: there are rumors that Montgomery Capital Solutions attempted to broker this deal and was rejected. Can you comment? Daniel's expression remained neutral. Montgomery Capital and Crown Point have no formal relationship. The Crawford acquisition was negotiated directly between our firms. And personally? You were married to Gregory Montgomery's daughter. That's not relevant to today's announcement. But it was relevant to him. Because 3 months ago, the divorce had been finalized. Vanessa had tried to fight it, had sent dozens of messages, had shown up at his office twice before security escorted her out. But Daniel had been clear: it was over. He'd learned that love without respect wasn't love at all. And he deserved better. They all did. The press conference wrapped up, and as Daniel was gathering his notes, his phone buzzed. A text from Elise. Meeting with the new education non-profit starts at 3. Don't be late, boss. He smiled. The non-profit was something he'd been planning for months, a foundation dedicated to helping kids from backgrounds like his get access to technology, mentorship, and opportunities. It was his way of honoring his father's memory. Of making sure no kid who wanted to build something would have to do it alone. As Daniel left the building, stepping into the bright afternoon sun, a woman approached him. She was young, maybe mid-20s, professionally dressed, with nervous energy. Mr. Cross? He turned. Yes? I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're busy. But I just wanted to say, she paused, gathering her courage. I grew up on the South Side. My dad was a custodian too. And when I read about you, about your story, it made me believe I could do something with my life. So I started my own company. It's small right now, just me and 2 employees, but we're building something. And I just wanted to say thank you. For showing people like us that we belong in these spaces. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. Something warm and real. What's your company called? Apex Consulting. We help small businesses optimize their operations. That's great work. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Send me your pitch deck. Crown Point is always looking for promising startups to invest in. Her eyes went wide. Are you serious? I'm serious. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you so much. She walked away, practically glowing, and Daniel continued toward his car. His driver opened the door. Good afternoon, sir. Afternoon, James. As they pulled into traffic, Daniel's phone buzzed one more time. A message from his mother. So you on the news. So proud of you, baby. Your father is smiling down on you. I love you. Daniel typed back. Love you too, Mom. See you Sunday. He put his phone away and looked out at the city. At the buildings rising into the sky. At the people moving through their lives, each carrying their own dreams and struggles. And he thought about the journey that had brought him here. About the boy from the South Side who'd learned to code in a library. About the man who'd built an empire in silence. About the moment he'd walked away from people who'd tried to make him small. About the peace he'd found in choosing himself. The car stopped at a red light. A woman crossed in front of them, holding the hand of a little boy who was pointing excitedly at something in a shop window. Daniel watched them and smiled. He'd lost a wife who'd never really seen him. He'd walked away from people who'd never valued him. But he'd found himself. And that, he realized, was everything. The light turned green, and they drove on. Sometimes the richest peace is silence. And sometimes silence is the only answer to those who never listened. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel small by people who should have seen your worth, leave a comment below. Share your story. You're not alone. And if you believe in the power of quiet strength, in building something real without needing constant validation, in choosing peace over approval, subscribe to this channel. Because there are more stories like this one. Stories about people who walked away from toxic situations and found themselves. Stories about dignity, respect, and the courage it takes to demand better. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. You just need the courage to walk away from anyone who tells you otherwise. Until next time, stay strong, stay silent when you need to, and speak up when it matters. This is your story too.